We're coming to you live from Rock
Rock
the
the
Crown.
crown.
Woo! Yes, welcome. Welcome to our finale. We are so excited. Can you believe this is the finale for season 2? All right. I'm just so excited. I can't believe it. We've all worked so hard. We glad you all have joined us for this grand finale and have joined us over the season. Can y'all believe we have 32 episodes? Wow. And I just recently went back and watched some other episodes again. They were so fantastic. So we want to welcome you to our finale for season 2. I am Nafisa.
I'm Nefertari, queen about her biz in finance, residential redevelopment, and creative designer.
I am Naima, your fitness guru and entrepreneur. And you are on mute.
You're on mute, baby. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Okay, we're going.
And I am Daia, boss queen, accountant, and entrepreneur.
Yes.
Thank you so much, queens. And thank you, Crown Nation, because you are in for a special treat for this finale. Today, our topic is going to be the Democratic Plantation.
Oof.
As we seek to hold others accountable, what is our responsibility?
Yes.
You heard me right. The Democratic Plantation. As we seek to hold others accountable, what is our responsibility? And how we came up with this topic was, of course, it's timely, right? Since we're in this current political cycle, but we came up with this topic because as we were going through all the politics over the last year and a half, and particularly the last few months, and this summer and the last few months, there was all this talk and energy and galvanizing around making sure that they got the black and the brown vote, and galvanizing and gathering the black and brown vote, and how can we use our voting power to basically direct and to direct the energy and direct the vote and help those uh, uh, in office win. And particularly, I say the Democrats, since African Americans are predominantly Democrat, right? And so we were seeking to, okay, if we use our votes to push in the Democratic presidential candidate, can we get some of our issues met? Right? And there also was a lot of of course, we don't have one particular voice. When you talk about Black Americans, we don't have necessarily one voice, even though we have common issues that we feel affect the Black community. But then there was this whole controversy around the pastors who went to visit Trump, and different people had different opinions about that, and that whole upheaval, and what was that about, you know? And then there was controversy when Ice Cube went to see Trump, and it was leaked out that he was collaborating with Trump to try to institute something for Black America. And whether you agree with it or not, it's not really our main concern. The whole idea of it is that we have Black power as a collective in terms of politics. And the thing is about using that power and strategizing, right? Strategizing our unity so that we can better position ourselves to get our issues taken care of, so that we are not left behind when it comes to economics, so that we're not left behind when it comes to politics, and also so that we can stake our own claim in this America that we helped build, right? And so this whole thing was about that. And that's why we said Democratic Plantation, right? And as we move forward, and we finish up this political cycle with us having this major race here in Georgia to get control of the Senate. We ushering in President Joe Biden next month is gonna be instituted as our new president, and he's going to unveil his plans for his first 100 days. And we're gonna have Black leaders that are gonna try to make sure that they position themselves to get our issues on the agenda in those 100 days. Then we have to shift and say, okay, now that we finish and we've done that, now what? What are we going to do now? What are we going to shift our focus to? So, our show today, we want to encourage everyone to make the shift from holding others accountable as we reflect on 2020 and we move into our goals for 2021, to make the shift toward empowering ourselves, right? Empowering ourselves to become more sufficient, more self-sufficient, whether you're talking about economics, whether you're talking about up-leveling our family relationships and our family life, whether you're talking about our spirituality and our religious practice, or you're also talking about our political and our civic engagement. We want to talk today, and hopefully we can, give you a little taste. We can give you a little spark. We can maybe shift some of your perspective and focus to make sure that we are positioning ourselves in 2021 to come out better and to position ourselves better to advance our progress as Black people. And with that said, we have our topics today that we want to talk about. And we want to encourage you too, as we go along, to make comments, ask questions, put them all in the comment section, because we're going to be watching that as we move along. And we're going to get started with Neff and talking about family life. Talking about how we can position ourselves for self-empowerment for our family life. Neff?
Hey, thank you very much, Nafisa. Yes, as it relates to family life, I really believe that this is the biggest and most important structure of all. Everything starts in the home. So, and we all know that our mother is our first teacher, and many of us, we have various types of structures of our families. Some of us have had 2-parent households. Some of us only a 1-parent household. And, oftentimes that is the mother. But these days, we also still see a growing number of single male fathers as well. And so in some households, you have grandparents as the parent, taking on the parent role as well, or aunts or uncles. So we have various ways of, various makeups of family life. And so as African Americans, we have many of what we call successful family structures. And so, but these families, they serve as examples for us as a pattern, a way for us to be able to pattern ourselves after. Now, although we have that, on the other hand, we also have families that actually need a little help, with having a better structure to have successful family. So more than 8 to 10 adults, during a study said that the adults say that some of our struggles with the breakdown of success rate for African American families is partly the legacy of slavery. The position of Black people in America today has had slavery has had a huge impact on us with that. This partly includes, the aftermath of slavery, economic deprivation, and urbanization. And so, successful families is not just being, I would say a successful family is, to be successful, that means we're not being second-class citizens. And so even when we are successful with certain things, a lot of times we still have that extra battle when it comes to just being able to get that position more so than if you're not African American. So these are just some of the things that kind of get in the way of being that perfect picture of success. And so just to give a little bit more of a breakdown of some of these things are things that we have to deal with is the racial equality. That definitely still needs some growth in that area. We have less access to good schools in our neighborhoods and our communities, less access to high-paying jobs. And of course, the criminal justice system we know is not always just, and so definitely we need work in those areas as it relates to our families as well. And our culture is also viewed as, oftentimes as not being smart. Now we know differently, but this is just one of those stereotypes that we have, And as far as ourselves, we have to use language for each other, because sometimes we're subjected to different slurs and jokes degrading our culture, but we have to make sure that we, say, what is our responsibility? We have to make sure that we don't degrade ourselves by using these types of languages. Children becoming parents, babies having babies. That's another breakdown of the structure of successful families. It causes more family instability. Some of the other struggles we have as African Americans with family life is a loss of job. When you have a head of the household lose a job, oftentimes we have two streams of income, I would say. If it is a two-parent household, we have two streams of income coming in, and so losing a job definitely has a huge impact on the structure of the family life being successful, because we need money. You need money for things to go well, and even when as it comes to housing, you need money to be able to, have adequate housing, healthcare, lack of good role models in our early lives as children, that is definitely something that is an impact that helps with the family life. Just needing to have that motivation and hard work, having a role model definitely helps to plant the seeds for that. Lack of quality employers, having stable employment. So not just having a job, but also a job where you don't have to worry about, that whole hiring process with, are you getting the same pay as someone else on your job, or, promotions, with whatever job that you're working, being able to climb that ladder. And voting rights. We know we've definitely been in the season of voting, and so we're still on the move with that, and racism. So these are things, and I'm mentioning some of these things, but these are things that we have to discuss inside of our homes. I know I have young adult men in my house, and I asked them the other day, like, have you voted yet? You can, we can get our vote in early. You don't have to wait until January 5th for this next round. So just needing to be able to teach our children early, and not just African Americans either, just teaching all of our children and all nationalities, because this is something that's important for families to do in the household, is to be able to teach them on a certain level, so that they kind of know what to expect. So when they get out in the world, they won't necessarily be subjected to things that they just had never heard of. So if you ask most African Americans, however, if they're proud to be who they are, we'll tell you, just like James Brown said, I'm Black and I'm proud. So we shouldn't have to operate in battle mode, in the world. 65%, including all majorities across ethnic groups, actually believe that racism is more openly spoken since President Trump has been in office. So we just have to be more comfortable in our homes and family life structures to have conversations with our children. Try not to talk to them. Some parents don't want to talk to their children in order to protect them, which that's understandable, but try to talk to them on a certain level, giving them as much information as you can. I would say that these days, mainstream society, as you get older and begin to experience more, we begin to experience more and more things, just as they did, decades ago. It's just masked a little differently these days. So I did a couple interviews actually on this topic of family life with two individuals, two African Americans, one at the age of 24 and one at 67. And I just kind of wanted to share a little bit before we move on with some of their thoughts, and of course tonight we would love for you to also put in the chat, or post it on what your thoughts are, as it comes to family life structure and what is our responsibility as it relates to that. So with Najee Fareed, who's actually my son, he's 24-year-old. Some of the views that he shared is that, our families have been portrayed as large, tight knit, and communal style living. We have mostly communal style living. He sees Black families as being very supportive to one another. And in today's world, you find African American women holding down the job and doing everything in the household. So this is his view as well. And that in many cases, we have in family households absent fathers. He said, unfortunately, that is just the case. And after the woman remarries, that she sometimes, because of that role that she's been in, has to still continue. It's hard for her to break that role and still continues to take on the same roles even after being married. And so men like women, he said, men like for women to be submissive. And in some cases, he said, they're not on top of their game, meaning men. He said, and it leaves a question of whether they're actually earning that right or not. And so that was pretty interesting coming from a 24-year-old. And then he talked about older siblings. A lot of times when we have single family households, a lot of times our older children, I would say even in really a two-parent household, this same thing can happen. You have older siblings or older children who take on more responsibilities than the younger ones. And so he said that he feels like that could be a huge responsibility sometime on the children, and just trying to not be as extreme and make sure they can still be a child, in their place and still be able to assist and help in the household. And he said a lot of Black men are coddled by their mothers. We've heard this a lot. And he said, especially the ones who have absence of their father. And so building healthy habits in the home, he says, very important. He said, and for the parents and grandparents, head of households, they should be more receptive in the household to just listening to the younger people, and just being more understanding of what the young people are going through, because as adolescents, middle school, elementary, high school, they really do kind of go through a lot of things. So just being an ear there for them. He said, especially with pre-COVID times, helping children cope through things mentally, physically, and emotionally. And so that was the shares from our 24-year-old, and just to share just a few more views from our 67-year-old. This is from Tamir Hassan. He talked about family life views as he sees things have really shifted due to COVID, which he has seen as a positive. One of the things is just being able to teach our children at home, being able to spend more time with them and being able to encourage them. He sees it as being a learning experience, not just for the child, but also for the parents. You're learning while you're teaching them, and then we all can learn even from our children. So just learning from each other and having closer knit relationships, he said, and being a servant, even to the ones that you love, building that relationship. And so during this year, that's one of the things that he could say has definitely come through, and he encourages that in family life for African Americans, that we should definitely focus on that. And lastly, just thinking about the older days in agricultural settings, with the sharecropping, we don't really see a whole lot of that now. He said, but what you do see is, as far as us doing that, but what you do see is we have a lot of African Americans who have their own businesses. And so even within our household, he just kind of pointed out a lot of us have our businesses. And so one of the things that he would like to see is for us to grow in a more cohesive type of setting where we can put our heads together, put our businesses together, and just be stronger, have stronger relationships, and building things so that we can build our community and our economics. And so we're going to move on to wealth and money. And Nafisa, you'll share some things with us on that.
Yes, thank you so much, Nat, for that. And insight into family life and the various aspects of family life that we can kind of pick and choose which ones we want to focus on as we go into the new year, to make sure that we focus on those particular aspects of our family life to improve and grow in those particular areas. So we want to thank you for that. And yes, I want to talk about economics. I'm biased, right? And I'm not just biased because I got an opinion. I'm biased also because it's just what I firmly believe that economics is the foundation for our freedom. I just believe that. I'm sorry. Um, and I kind of look at it um, like women, we can relate to this, right? When we grow up, and it's all, you should have your own money. You should be able to make your own money, right? So that you don't have to ask a man for something, even though he may, if he's the head of a household, he might be providing for you. But the situation is, if you have your own money, if you have your own economic base as a woman, right? Then your options, you're not going to feel enslaved by a man's money or happen to be subjugated to a man's money. So you can apply this same type of concept when it comes to black people, right? So when and where I enter, the whole race enters with me, right? So I can't just go by myself and think, oh, okay, I'm a millionaire, so now I got all this power. No, the whole race has to be uplifted and have an economic base and be able to unify economic power. And that's what it is that we're coming from. You can't have freedom if you got to ask somebody else to take care of you. You can't have freedom as a race if you got to ask somebody for a handout or every time you always going to them asking for something, right? So that's why economics to me is a foundation of our freedom. If you're not focusing on that first, you can't build up to the other stuff. So that's basically where I'm at. So I'm going to strongly encourage and try to empower people to make sure that they move themselves, their families, and their community forward economically, that they make that a major cornerstone of their plan. And when I say economic, I'm not just talking about, make a little bit more money, right? I'm talking about making a lot more money, right? And not just you making a lot more money. I'm talking about you, your family, and everybody else making a lot more money, right? And when I say a lot, you need to define what that is. So if you says, okay, well, I want to make more in 2021 than I made in 2020. Okay, what is that? What does your freedom money look like? A lot of people like to say $1 million. I want to make $1 million. Okay, why a million? Like, what does a million get you? And how does that break down on a monthly basis? You know, that's what, a little over, a little less than $10,000, right? $100,000 a month, right? 100,000 times 10 is a million. So that's a little less than $100,000 a month. If you're talking about making a million, okay, what does that look like in terms of what you have right now? You know, and what does that buy you? And what does that buy your family in terms of freedom? Not just in terms of things, the Gucci belt, the Louis Vuitton. Those are nice, right? But that doesn't buy you freedom to be self-determined and to have decisions about how you're going to operate in the world. And I wanted to especially highlight this notion about how you do that, right? Because there are, I want us to focus on multiple streams of income for 2021. Most people, even if you're making $100,000, if you only have that one source of income, right? $100,000 from that one source of income, and you lose that job, you get laid off, then what? You might have a little bit of savings, but you're going to be stuck. So we need to focus on multiple streams of income, whether that is in addition to your job, you starting another side business, you're doing investment in real estate, investment in stocks, investment internationally in different types of things. Whether that is you're writing and doing something you can do one time, like write a book, but you still get paid over and over for it. Whether that is writing music, there's different types of things that you can do that would generate, you do it one time and it generate money. So I want to make sure that we incorporate that in 2021. And as religious people, as people that believe in God, poverty, no, no. God offered us abundance. And it's up to us to claim it. We can't do the majority of God's work without abundance. Right? And as a massive group of people, black people, we can't we can do a little bit here and a little bit there, but you can't do the masses of people without any money. You always be wanting and dependent on somebody else. And I also wanted to highlight too this particular thing. because we're all women here on this show and we're all Black women on this show. And all of us are educated. And this whole notion of Black women are the most educated group in America. We have more degrees and advanced degrees than any other group. And it's true. It's true. We have more degrees than white men, but we don't have our money to go along with that. We still only making 62 cents off for every dollar that a white man makes. And even if you say, okay, well, I'm a professional, I'm a lawyer, I'm a physician, so my income is different. No. Even professionals only make 52 cents on a dollar for what their white male counterparts makes. So there's a disconnect between the number of degrees we have and our ability to produce economic progress. So we need to switch our strategies, because our strategies are usually, I get a bachelor's degree, I get a job. Oh, I'm not making enough money. Okay, let me go get a master's degree. Oh, I'm not making enough money. Oh, okay. Okay, well, let me get a PhD, because do you know how many unemployed PhDs there are? A lot. Do you know how many low wage earning PhDs there are? A lot. So we have to redefine and take another look at how a different formula, a different strategy for producing economic wealth. Because us getting more degrees, holding up a whole bunch of paper, is not going to advance our generations that's going to come after us. And they're already, a lot of them are in a worse position than we were. So that's something that I want us to think about. And also, too, another thing is acquiring resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking about land, I'm talking about natural resources. We need to start putting our attention on not just buying a house, but buying land, buying natural resources, buying some acres, right, that we can pass down to generations. Okay, so that's another thing I want us to think about. And I also want to encourage us. It's that time of the year where it's a giving season, right? And when I looked on the agenda for a lot of churches, a lot of mosques, masjids, a lot of groups, there's a whole, we're all feeling a sense of we're about to go through an even more economic depression over the next coming months with the whole COVID thing and just general things that are affected economically. And our response to that has been, we need to galvanize our resources to feed more people, right? So we need to have a pantry. We need to have more boxes to go after people so they won't be hungry. We need to make sure that we have trucks now to do that. You know what I mean? You see people pulling up trucks and giving out food and giving out boxes and organizing this. And as I looked, I said, okay, let me look at all the activities of a particular organization. And what are the most of their activities directed towards? Are they directed more towards giving fish out? Because that's what I see. Or are they directed more towards teaching people how to get their own fish? Because as long as you keep giving fish out, which I'm not saying that to a certain extent that there isn't a need for that, but as long as you keep giving fish out, you're going to have to keep giving fish out. We need to have more resources directed towards teaching people how to fish for themselves. So I want us to shift in 2021, whether we're talking about organizations, whether we're talking about people, oh, I gave all this food away, see, look at me on social media. No, no. Oh, I fed this many homeless. That's good. But did you put together a program to teach the homeless how to fish? Did you put together a program to teach those women how to fish? That's what I want to see. I'm still going to give my little money. I'm going to give my little canned goods. But the majority of my activities is going to be about teaching people how to fish. And I need y'all to do the same so that we can elevate all Black people, the masses of Black people, not just, oh, me, look at me, I'm making $200,000 or I made $1 million. No, I want all my sisters and brothers to rise up with me. So that's my little spiel for us in our focus, or shifting our focus for 2021 from an economic basis. And I am going to turn it over to my queen, who's going to tell us about the politics so that we can have our money be galvanized around the political candidates that we want to see in power and push forward. Go, queen.
All right, thank you so much, Nafisa. We always have great, great energy when we start talking about money, family. And now we want to continue this great energy going into politics and civic responsibility. Now, this may be a little bit of a dredge for some people that, you know, people really aren't into politics and civic responsibility. But if you are a US citizen, this is part of your existence here in America. So of course we start this off early in school when we're, you know, elementary. We start talking about being nice and kind to one another, and then you go to middle school, and then you start to really go into these classes. You start changing classes, and when you start changing classes, you're going through history and things like that. But then when you go into high school, you start to go into political science, and you know, all these different kinds of sciences as well, since different kinds of maths. And so now you're expanding upon this whole concept of smaller concepts that you began all the way in kindergarten. But one thing that I think that we have failed to do as people here in America is continue to teach people about politics, which is a science, right? Politics is a science. It's called political science. And most people, when they went to college, if they chose to go to college, they slept through that class. Let's just be honest, right? So in political science, people slept through that class. And so people know the branches of government. People know, you know, that we have a Congress and a Senate. But what people don't know is exactly the power of each of those positions. People don't really understand, yeah, the president of the United States, who this person is, yeah, that's he's over the United States. But do they really, in the sense of the entire world, know how much power that position holds? And it holds a lot of weight in the world, right? So then we need to think about, okay, me as a US citizen, what is my responsibility? So civic responsibility means active participation in public life of a community in an informed, committed, and constructive manner with a focus on the common good, not your good, not senator's good, not Congress's good, the common good, meaning that it is looking at the aspect for all human beings that exist here in America. So when we start talking about civic responsibility, when people start saying things like, I'm not voting, then you're not being responsible. That's really what you're saying. I don't want to be responsible. And then one thing that I know that we have had to kind of deal with as African American people is there's no one on our on the ticket that reflects us, right? And then I've also seen and read conversations lately about the lesser of the two evils and how dare we pick somebody over the other. We should just not vote. And then when we start talking about even with the lesser of the two evils, you know, as Black people, we should not be voting for anyone that's not Black, right? And just kind of thinking of all of these different dichotomies that we have in our head and our mind, that all goes back to, if you see previous lessons and previous shows that we talked about, it goes back to the mindset, right? And how communities are formed through ideas and concepts. And so those ideas and concepts still are all predicated on some of the same basic principles that people want all across the board. Everyone wants what? Peace. Everyone wants love. Everyone wants life, meaning life that is just, right? Everyone wants wealth. Everyone wants happiness. And so that is the common good. So when we start thinking of civic responsibility, yeah, you do need to vote because you're having to make choices with people who may and may not affect how you live every day. So thinking of civic responsibility, I just kind of want to go over the importance and talk about what are the rights and responsibilities of US citizens, just in case everyone did not know what their responsibility is as a US citizen. These include the right to vote in federal elections and the ability to serve on a jury. When you get that summons inside the mail that says it is your responsibility to go to jury duty, go. Because when we start talking about this person was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Well, it may have been a different result had we had more people of color serving on the jury. And so when we start talking about the jury of our peers, we keep talking about how there's a problem with it, but then we never want to serve jury duty. We always want to make excuses. Oh, I'm in work. I got to go to school. No, serve on as a juror in order to affect the decisions that are being made in some of these courts when we have to deal with our brothers and sisters. Freedom to express ourselves. We all know that that's a freedom that we all take and we use it, right? But that is part of being here a U.S. citizen. Freedom to worship as you wish. People should be able to worship as they wish and not be berated like they're doing right now. They berate people about how their religion is saying certain things and they're quote unquote being radical. We're not listening for that. You have the right to promote fair trial by jury. You have the right to keep and bear arms, whatever your position is on that. It is a right. And for you as a U.S. citizen, you have the right to vote again. You have the right to apply for federal employment. You have the right to run for elected office. This part to me is very important. So when we start talking about making changes inside of what is our responsibility, we're holding people accountable. Well, guess what? If you feel like there are people that are not doing the job that you want them to do, stand up. Be your own political officer. You have the right to be elected in an office. And so if you feel like you can do better, then do better, right? So it's always the whole bunch of group of people that are complaining. But then if you really want to make a change, become that politician. And a politician, again, it is the science of government that we're looking into. Not just, somebody who's, flapping their gums and going to make changes, but the science of government. You have the freedom to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we know as African Americans, that is a whole nother definition for us. But we have the right to travel with a U.S. passport. So when we start talking about, okay, I want to travel somewhere, that is your right as a human being to travel somewhere outside of the United States. And when people tell you that you can't travel to a specific place and they are saying that they are U.S. citizens, like if people come into this, if they're not U.S. citizens and they're trying to say, oh, you can't travel with your passport. Yes, I can. That is a right for me as a U.S. citizen. I can travel. You are able to, of course, you have to follow the laws of the land, but that is your responsibility as a citizen. You can have citizenship. If you come here and then you married somebody or want somebody else to come here and get citizenship, they're able to do that as well. But rights, though, those are our rights as and responsibilities of U.S. citizens. But then also responsibilities of citizens is that we uphold the law. There's a lot of things that we kind of point the finger at and say, oh, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. But we need to understand the laws in this country, meaning even down to going back to understanding the Constitution. And most of the rights that affect people of color would be the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Please, please study those laws, because if you don't study them and understand them, certainly you may not think that you are giving or being dealt a fair hand. But if you don't know what that hand is, it's always going to look unjust, right?
Right.
We need to be able to participate in the democratic process. And that just means that you have a say. But if all the say that you're doing is behind closed doors, it's pointless, right? I'm having all these deep conversations. I think it's so funny. One analogy I want to make is that, have you ever seen Men on Sunday, right? Men on Sunday, they start talking about the football game. All of a sudden, all men that watch football are experts. They all need to be on CNN, right? Because they all feel like they know what the coach should have done and the play that the quarterback should have made. And they're so invested in that, but they haven't taken any courses on how to be a coach. They don't, half of them have never even played sports. They don't even know those plays, but yet they want to be an expert. So when we start talking about you being a U.S. citizen and having civic responsibility, get hip on that, right? Get excited about that. Be excited about, hey, this is my right. If a police officer pulls you over, do you know whether or not you have to speak to them when they come and tap on your window? Do you have to roll the window down? Do you have to give them your ID in a public place if you haven't done anything wrong? And if you don't know these things, how do you know if you're being violated? So it's important for us as people to learn this, understand this, and then pass it on to the next generation. We can't say that our future generation is going to be bright when we don't know that information. And remembering that as we're passing these laws, making these votes and doing all these different things, this is not just affecting us now. This is affecting us in 15 years. So if anyone remembers, I know that I remember, when George Bush, the second one, was in office, he had passed the law where if your child is a male, he has to automatically be entered into the, so you have a choice in whether or not you don't have a choice. If you're an American citizen, you have to sign up for the Secret Service. But Bush passed a law that says it's automatic. And so our sons, all four of us ladies on this, they're automatically, if they're not in school and going through these certain things, they're automatically put into the Secret Service. And everybody's like, I mean, whatever it is, the Army thing, right? Tell me, if you get online and say it. That Secret Service, like, the United States, everybody's like, Secret Service.
The selective service.
The selective service, right? And so that affected us then, but it's affecting our children now. So remembering that the decisions we're making now will affect our grandchildren in 15 years, 20 years. So thinking of, okay, I'm not going to vote. Okay, guess what? That's going to affect your grandchildren. So when your grandchildren can't do certain things, when we're going all the way back to slavery and all these things, when we're disrespected, when we can't work, when we can't vote any longer, when we can't stand up for ourselves, when all of our constitutional rights begin to be stripped from us, it's as a result of us not following the democratic process and just being a US citizen. So we have to kind of think about all of these things, how we're going to move forward. And so last thing I want to share is that, I don't know if everybody went and saw Stacey Abrams' talk on TED Talks. I love TED Talks. But Stacey was on there. She did a TED Talk after the gubernatorial election. And she was just basically talking about what happened, the process of when she first went to see the governor when she was a child. And, she had a very, very interesting experience there. But then she said that she asks herself 3 questions. And this is something that I want us to think about when we begin to think about how we move and how we hold ourselves accountable. And the first question is, what do I want? Right? What do I want? This is important in terms of our future. What do I want? Second question is, why do I want it? So even thinking in the political realm, who do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What is it that you want out of this political process? Why do I want it? And the last question she asks herself is, how do I get it? And this is where we have to hold ourselves accountable. How do we get it? And we cannot be sitting back saying that the white man, this, that, and the other. No, it is our responsibility to make sure that what we need, we get. It is our responsibility to make sure what we need, we get. And so with that being said, we cannot be, as she would say, worried about finance. Finance should not be holding us back. We should not be living in fear, because fear is a big deal in the African American community. We have to learn to overcome those fears. And again, the fear is, what do I want? Right? When you start thinking about things you're afraid of as an African American, what do I want? Why do I want it? And how do I get it? Right? That's going to disable all of those fears. And then the fatigue that we get living in Black in America. We get tired. We're so tired of doing all of this stuff. The struggle is real. But guess what? The fatigue should take you to a resting place where you stop and you go back and ask yourself, what do I want? Why do I want it? And how do I get it? And with that being said, we're going to move on, because how do I get it? Always takes us to a higher power, Lord. Yes, it takes us to a higher power. So we're going to ask Daia to speak to us about religion and spirituality and how we need to hold ourselves accountable in the African American community.
Yes. Thank you, ladies. Again, I want to just mention what our topic for today is: the Democratic Plantation. As we hold others responsible, what is our responsibility? So especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, being so prominent today, there's a lot of finger pointing that's going on, right? We're saying it's them, it's this, it's that, and always we have to take the time to consider ourselves. What is our responsibility? What is our role, that has led us to a lot of these events that are here now? And until we do that and really examine those issues and deal with those issues, we're going to keep having the same issue over and over again. So I have been charged to talk about this, what our responsibility is from a religious and spiritual perspective. And so as I thought about this, I tried to think, well, what is our responsibility, religiously? Because a lot of times we think about our religion being something personal to us, right? We're in our home, we make our prayers, we say our prayers for Christians before we go to bed. We go to church, for Muslims and Christians 1 day a week, right? We go 1 day a week to go in congregation. And so, that's the only time really that we're really engaged with one another. But we have to really seriously start to think about what is our religious responsibility to try to make things better for our community, to try to make things better for our world. And I'm speaking today not only to Muslims, I'm also speaking to our brothers and sisters of faith, of the Abrahamic faiths, those who believe in one God. I'm speaking to those people today. There's a verse in Quran that says, "Let there rise from you a band of people, enjoining all that is good and forbidding what is bad." And that's what we need today. We need that band of people to join together, to join hands, and to try to promote the good that's going on in society and to condemn these wrongs that are going on in society. Something that happens to one person, if it happens to one of us, it can turn around. The tables can turn and it can happen to any of us. If we think about it, the reason that the white supremacists are up in arms right now is because they see that their race, unfortunately, is fading, right? We know that you can take a Black person and a white person together and you're going to get what? You're going to get Black. But if there's no way to get white from Black, right? So their race is diminishing, and there's a fear now, right? So the tables tend to turn. But the good thing about this, the good news I have for those white supremacists is that Black people are compassionate. We are kind. Despite everything that has happened to us, we don't turn around and do the same thing. We extend the arm of compassion. So that's my very first tip that I have is, and when talking about this from a religious perspective, is that we extend the wing of compassion. Compassion to those families who have lost their loved ones to a police officer, a bad racist police officer. To extend our wing of compassion to those families who have lost loved ones to this disease that is uncontrollable, that is out there, and it does not discriminate. It takes the young, it takes the old, it takes the Black, it takes the white. So extending that wing of compassion, opening our doors like we used to do. We used to, when we would hear about something happening to someone's family, what would we do? We would go in the kitchen, bake some pies, fry some chicken, and deliver it to the families. We need to go back and return to those same values, those values that are common among all of those three faiths, okay? All of the Abrahamic faiths. Again, I'm speaking to all of my brothers and sisters under the one God, okay? So extending your wing of compassion. And then also, having the courage also to practice your religion. Again, Muslims and Christians alike, we are under attack. We are under attack by a devil who wants to keep us from worshiping God. He wants to keep his ideas out on the forefront. He wants to take us away from the common goodness that we all have. He wants to take us away from having justice for all, right? So have courage to practice your religion. Have courage to go to the mosque on Fridays. Have courage to go to church on Sundays. Have courage when you're at a party and everyone is drinking and you don't drink for religious reasons. Have courage to say, no, I'm good. No, I'm fine. And to my young people, when you're being offered all these other things, have the courage to say, no, I'm good. I have a spiritual high. I have this high within me that I don't need those spirits. I don't need those spirits. Okay. So having the courage to be able to stand up, to use your religion, let your religion be your strength. Let God be your strength. Okay. Let your community of religious and spiritual people be your strength. And then also, I want us to talk about guiding our families in the best manners, guiding our families to decency. I don't know if you all saw this video that's circulating with this lady who is whooping the mess out of her child. And I'm looking and I'm getting ready to pick up the phone and call DFAX. And then I'm wondering, what did this child do? What did this child do? Because she was beating this child, beating her everywhere, all over her body. And then she shows the video where the child, this is like a 7-year-old little girl, little African-American girl, 7 years old. And the little girl is with her legs open. She's got pants on, but she's sitting there and she's being very seductive in front of the camera. And then she's doing all kind of things. So leading and guiding our family to decency and making sure that we screen what our children are watching. This little girl saw something somewhere, okay? And if we're not watching what our children are watching, then this is what happens, okay? Because somewhere along the lines, this little girl was sitting with her tablet and she saw another woman who looked beautiful, looked like what they're putting up on TV as being the epitome of a woman. And that's what she saw her doing. So she wanted to emulate this person who society is saying is the cream of the crop, right? And so she learned a very hard lesson, but this child should be taught in another way. She should be taught what she should be doing. She should be taught the women that she should be emulating. I just watched a really great lecture on our mother Mary, Jesus's mother. May peace be upon them both. And it was just talking about what a devout woman she was and how patient she was. So these are the lessons that we need to teach to our children. And it's not old, it never gets outdated. A woman who is devoted to God, that's a timeless lesson, right? It's not just for, the mother of Jesus from several years ago. This is timeless. Being and having a relationship with God is timeless. So the final point that I wanted to make is Muslims, Christians, study your religion, okay? The days of just taking grandmama and daddy's word for it are over. Go to your books, read your books, find out what God wants of you, find out what will make you a better person. Stop, learn about yourself, learn about your religion, learn about God. And this is, I believe, is one of the greatest tools, for this opioid epidemic, because people are trying to fill this void. There's a void within these people that they're trying to satisfy, something that's missing. And the missing piece is God. I know I've said God a lot, and I know I've probably made a lot of people uncomfortable, for some of our people who may not be, but I hope not. Black people are spiritual people. We are a spiritual people. And we just have to return to those spiritual values and use those values to empower our people, empower the world. It starts with us. You start first with empowering yourself. Empowerment of self is number one. After you've empowered yourself, you move on, you empower your family. Okay, from there, you go to your community. From there, you go to your city and your state and your country, and then the world. It starts here. There's much more benefit in good than there is in bad. We have too much that's going on. This year has been a huge lesson for all of us that we have to come together. We have to band together. The days of Satan trying to draw these lines and put us in these little boxes is over. Everybody who wants good, come this way, come to the right, line up, let's get to work. Everybody who wants something else, let's silence them. It's too loud. The noise of people who are trying to turn this world into something evil is too loud. We need to turn it down. We need to turn that volume down on that. Turn up with the Lord. So that's my spiel. It has been a pleasure doing this season with these ladies. I'm just, really enjoying expressing myself. I'm not one who is out there like that. Me being live with you all today is a big deal. Okay. This is me really, I am jumping over some hurdles right now. So that's my spill for the day. Nafisa, I'll take it back to our hostess with the mostest.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Daia, for that and bringing us back to the spiritual and trying to make sure that we're charting our direction.
Mhm.
And also, something you said that was very, very important. We need to promote the good. We need to spread the good news. We need to spread the karma because, like you said, the devil, and we don't think of the devil as, an actual being. It's more about his influence, right? Right. So it's more about his influence. But a lot of people sometimes, and it goes back to what Naima said about having courage. Having courage to promote the good. Sometimes people don't want to promote the good because I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to offend anybody. But no, promoting the good in people. And we need to promote our good instead of focusing on, we want to be weary. We want to take notice of what's going on in terms of the bad. But we want to promote the good so that we can make the good news. We can market the good news. We can spread the good news. We can promote it. We should be promoting good news on social media, just like they're promoting all the bad on social media. We need to be promoting the good on social media and promoting the good when we speak. And these are some of the things that we want to make sure that we can do, right? And you can speak it. You can speak a word to the right. You can do right. You can be right. And you can act right.
Right.
Right? So we can all take responsibility in that realm. And also, too, when it comes to our family life, just to wrap up, our political life and our economic life, we want to make sure as we're ending 2020 and we're going into 2021, that we want to seize this opportunity to make sure that whatever direction that we want to go in, that we are operating from a circle of influence of ourselves, our family, our communities, and the world as well. And we want to operate from that and we want to promote that. And we want to make sure that we're specific in our requests for ourselves and we're specific in our requests for others as well. So we want to wrap this up. And we want to thank you so much, Crown Nation. I'm not sure if we had time for comments because we kind of went
That's
a
okay.
little longer.
If anybody wants to comment, you can comment on the thread, but we want to make sure that everyone is still going to continue to follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook as well, and Instagram. Don't forget about our Twitter, and to subscribe to us on YouTube, because season 3 is going to be muy caliente. Okay,
it's going to be fire.
Okay,
it's fire. And send us your suggestions. Send us your suggestions also, because give us some feedback. What were your favorite episodes for season 2?
Right.
What were your favorite episodes? Which ones do you want us to dive deeper in? I know y'all want us to dive deeper in. It's so sexy.
Lisa wants y'all to dive deeper in.
But what was some of your
other sexting? So, well, let's just do a roundabout. What was your favorite episode this season? Neff?
Oh, for me, I think my favorite was the one that we did when we talked about depression and anxiety, just being able to talk to our viewers and that was really good for me. Just get that information. That was one of my favorite. And then of course, the one where we were doing the health and wellness with the nutrition, I got a chance to get in the kitchen and hook up my salad. I really like that,
Right. All right.
Trying to show some workout moves and running out of breath.
Right. Somebody was like, that was the bomb salad that Neff made. I was like, okay.
I didn't get to see the whole thing, but I'll show you guys another time.
Right. Right. Diane, what was your favorite episode?
I like this one because we were live. So that was awesome. And I really liked the topic. You know, I really felt empowered. And I really think that that was what we were trying to get across. So I felt the power.
That. Okay, Nafisa. Not just biased,
favorite.
but I know what yours was. Of course,
We know.
Was my favorite. And you know why soul section was my favorite? Because we don't talk about it.
Right.
And we don't talk about it. We definitely don't talk about spreading the good news. We definitely don't talk about it from the love making aspect, from the spiritual aspect. We don't talk about it. We just let everybody else promote their version of it. But we don't talk about the good news and the good about it. So that was my favorite one to get that topic out. And I do got some more tips for y'all. So make sure y'all put y'all requests in.
I love it. And I think my favorite episode was actually last week. My episode.
I know it. That was me too. I knew you was gonna say that.
Community and really, I mean, just like, what are we doing with religion? Like, how does that play for? How does that play in our lives? And just the aspects that we spoke about, in with love and everything that we talked about last week. I loved that. Was my favorite. But then of course, anytime, my second favorite was Back to Africa. Is it a viable option? I mean, just thinking about like, man, we giving people tools. I was like, I need to look up this stuff myself and try to get me another place in Africa, right? So I really, really enjoyed that. So, and then of course, I always appreciate, I just want to tell everybody out there in Crown Nation, thank you so much for continuing to encourage us. I was speaking to someone yesterday who watches every episode, and she was just like, man, I gotta tell you, that Daia, honey. That Daia, she is powerful. She's quiet, but she is powerful. I was like, honey, I'm gonna be sure to tell her that. So stay on that, Daia, okay? She was like, you and Nafisa got that. And that secretary, honey, she just blossoming. So, everybody is looking at everything. So, alhamdulillah, thank you all so much for that. But I mean, this is not just an opportunity for us to be able to speak, but it is a platform in which we can have our voices being heard. And of course, coming from us, not only being Black women, but being Muslim women, women of faith, women of conviction. We're all friends. And as you can see, we all have differences of opinions, right? But we're still a collective unit, still a collective force. And so, as someone told me yesterday, this is important, not just because we're speaking, but also because we're bringing attention from our perspective to the community. So we thank you all so much for that encouragement. And again, be looking out for season 3. We'd love to hear from you. I know that people kind of get a little drowned out with social media, but if you're thinking of us, always go onto our platform, send us a little note, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Some love.
So thank you so much as we wrap up our finale for our season 2, our 32nd episode. So we're going to sound off. We thank you so much, Crown Nation, for joining us on another episode of Rock the Crown.
Peace and love, Crown Nation. We'll see you all soon.